Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Podcast, the number one global podcast in the freelance economy, and the spot where you entrepreneurs, you innovators, and even you corporate warriors come to drive the freelance economy forward. So today we're going to have Rishon, and Rishon is one of the founders of 10X. 10X is one of the OGs of not being a marketplace, but being a talent agency. So they started in 2011. They focus on high skilled technical talent. And I would argue that they've predicted the future by being more of a talent agency and a hyper rich and robust talent network instead of being a large horizontal marketplace. And we're going to hit on a couple things. The first thing is we're going to really hit on what has changed. Now, they started 10X in 2011. They published a book. Actually, we had the same publisher, so they published Game Changer. I think it was 2021. And they've been working intensely with program level relationships with their clients since 2011. And so we're going to hit on what has changed, what hasn't changed. A little hint / a little tidbit that I want you to be listening for is what drives a client relationship forward. And one of the number one things they mentioned was expectations, specifically enabling clients to understand what to expect, what exactly they need, and having the right processes to consistently do that at scale. And one of those processes is making sure someone is on point. Another thing I really want you to listen for is what does it mean to have a robust talent network? And one of the words that he used was he said that we are low volume, meaning 300 freelancer roster, but a 6,000 freelancer waitlist, high touch, meaning high touch points with the clients and the talent, and higher cost. So not settling for saying, hey, we have 100 at a low cost, but instead really focusing on the experience. And then the last thing is I want you to hear for some of the innovative things they're doing. So they have what they call a TAP, a talent availability program, targeted at really helping VCs and their portcos tap into freelance workforces. And so I want you to hear those things. I think if you are an enterprise leader, you're going to walk out really understanding how to start building a good program. And if you're a marketplace leader, you're really going to have a 10-year crash course in building your marketplace. So sit back, enjoy, and then go drive some change. All right. Well, Rishon, let's get rolling. For you listeners out there, Sean and I have been, what's it been, Rishon? 5 years now? 6 years now?
I think we actually first met during the pandemic, early in the pandemic, or right before the pandemic. No, it was early in the pandemic in Miami.
That's right. But we had been email friends for like 2 years.
Yeah. Well, we talked when you were conceiving of your book. We were conceiving of our book. I think you first, maybe through John, reached out and spoke to Michael, my partner Michael, and I'm pretty sure we have a quote from you in our book jacket or our book collateral. So that would have been sometime around 2019, but we met in person at the very beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I love it. And found out you guys got way more money. And I think you have more, I think you have more translations now, but we do have the same publisher, which is funny. And so just, for your listeners out there, and Rishon, there's going to be an intro obviously before this, but there's a couple themes. And I think one of the themes that I'm so amped to talk about you with is this, I would call it the transition from talent marketplaces to talent networks. And I think the implications of that is it's less so look how much people we have and more so look how good we are to our people that they're going to want to work with you because you're coming through us. So that's going to be one theme of how you've from the start been a talent agency, not a talent marketplace. A couple other things is your, like you personally, your progression from music to this industry. And then the third is what I'm so pumped to talk about is how to go from being a musician to breaking into a tech talent agency, because it's from the outside. It's not a simple little shift, right? Or not a simple bridge. So can we just start by acting like you and I are walking down, what street was it in Brickell, just grabbing ice cream? And
yeah, we were walking around the block, like sort of in a loop, exactly. But a beautiful loop. The weather was gorgeous. We were on the water. Yeah, I can't remember where that was.
Oh, we grabbed ice cream. Yeah, we grabbed coffee Oreo ice cream, and you know where we went? Little Havana. It was the
Well, that was the first time. The second time when we met for brunch or coffee or whatever, we were on Brickell walking around that big block
yes,
right by the causeway
yes.
onto Key Biscayne.
Actually, Rashawn, I have a fun update for you, by the way. So when we grabbed ice cream first time there, I think it was Azakura, I think it was called.
Mm.
The week before, or week after, I had just gone on like our first date with Farnia, and I forgot to tell you this. We got engaged last weekend. So perfect timing.
Congratulations.
That's why I look tired, and you're actually one of the only meetings I took this week. But so yeah, it's a small world. But can we please literally just start from scratch with you? And the only
Sure.
little tip that I want to put in was that you went to Wharton for entrepreneurship, and so this is not
Yes.
a hey, I was a musician that walked into this. That's such a cool little
Yeah.
fun fact. But
Well, actually, so I wasn't a musician at all. I mean, I took piano lessons when I was young. So my music side was purely entrepreneurial and was really based on the idea that there's certain industries where you need to either have resources to start, like if you're going to start a business, brick and mortar or otherwise, you need seed money, investment money. Or if you're going to go into, let's say, finance, you need to have some sort of finance pedigree, either experience in courses in finance or internships or people who are in finance that can help you out. Barriers to entry are different in other industries than they were for me in music because I grew up in New York City with so many people whose parents were actually in the business. So for me, music was much more an entrepreneurial pursuit. It was like, where will I have the lowest barrier to entry? And I don't necessarily need seed capital or funding or something like that. And that's how I got into it. Or that was sort of the decision that I made pretty early on while I was still in college, to pursue music as a business career, not a musician career.
oh, okay. And so were you the business person and Michael was the creative slash artist?
I mean, we were both. We have and still have very complementary skill sets. Um, we just both had a similar entrepreneurial spirit and also an interest in music. Again, because of the access. Like both he and I grew up in New York City. We've known each other since third grade. We knew the same people, the same parents. So for us, it became a let's do this as a partnership because we're traveling down the same road. And we had done other, businesses. We had a fake ID business when we were in high school. We were the guys who would rent the loft space in New York and go to a beer distributor in high school and then promote a party to all the different private schools around the city. So like we had these other businesses that we had done together and we knew that we worked well together. I would say the role I play and have played is a little bit more on the business side, maybe like a CFO type role, whereas he had a little more experience with record companies, and I had more experience with touring things because I also worked for a concert promoter for a couple of concert promoters, and he had worked at a couple of record companies. So we had these complementary skill sets, which, by the way, I recommend in any partnership. Like you want to be able to cover more ground so that two adds up to three or four. And we divide and conquer today. Like the businesses that we run today, we try not to overlap in the things that we do. We still consult each other on things. We're still in communication about things, but we try to divide and conquer.
Gotcha. Can we literally talk about that? That is it's a topic that we haven't brought up on the pod, but is something that I know a lot of because, I'm going to give you a little hierarchy of our listeners right now. So first is enterprise leaders driving freelance programs. Second is marketplace or provider leaders. And the second bucket is usually 1 to 3 people who are doing incredible as an IC themselves and said, why am I fighting the fight myself? Let's create this fight for others. And so we've all had this question of, okay, how do we find a good partner? How do we build a good partnership? And, I've had a lot of partners, right? So I've had a book partner with Matt Coatney, love him to death. I had a CTO in my prior, SaaS startup. And that was like, tech brain, creative brain clashing in good ways, but also like how to really manage that. But for you, what do you think creates a good partnership? And I love the little tidbit of you guys had a fake ID business and then you were
Yeah.
throwing parties for private school kids. Like gold.
The best part about the fake ID business is that we misspelled the word license. We've used that as sort of a way to, if we ever got busted for it, to be like, of course it's not real. Like license isn't even spelled correctly. Like, come on, this isn't. You can't fault a couple of kids for trying to make a buck, but clearly it's not a real thing because the license is wrong. Anyway, so I think it's a great question. Finding partners, and this I think what I'm going to say works equally as well for pure partnerships or also partnerships where you're maybe a freelancer partnering with a company or where you're an employee working within a company. I think those kinds of partnerships or all of these kinds of partnerships really benefit from the same kind of outlook. And we actually talk, there's a chapter in our book about the sabotage instinct. It's like the manageability continuum. That's what we call it. On one side is the sabotage instinct, and the other side is the success instinct. And I think the number one thing that anybody has to look out for in any kind of partnership that they're in are people who are prone to sabotage. Now, that's not so easy to identify early on, but it's the kind of thing where when you do identify somebody who's like, they just make the wrong decision continuously at the wrong moment and throw roadblocks up that are problematic, you want to unwind that relationship fast. So it's almost like maybe partner quick, unwind partnership fast. You want to try and find somebody, and this is what Michael and I, having known each other for so long, it was super helpful. Like we knew we had complementary skill sets. I'm very detail oriented. He's much more sort of big picture creative. I'm great at operations stuff. He's really good at like sort of people skills, ideas type things. So we have a complementary skill set there where he may come up with a bunch of really interesting ideas, and I'm the one who's like operationally like it won't work because of this, that, and the other thing. So it really helped us over the years in the various businesses that we've had or tried to get to a sort of product market fit conceptually much earlier. So I think that sabotage instinct, like avoiding people who have that or removing yourself from people who have that. And again, this is in freelance relationships, this is in employment relationships, and it's in partnerships. And then also finding people with complementary skill sets, I think is super important. And, on the freelance side, that's really the services that we're providing at 10X as a company is what are the skill sets that you as a company are lacking? And we plug those in. So we find that yin and yang. Like you may be great at having a core tech team that can handle this stuff. But if you want to build this one thing, maybe your core tech team either doesn't have the capacity or the knowledge, and you bring in somebody who can fill that void, who can be that yin to the yang there. So I think those are some really key things in finding and balancing the right partnerships. But Michael Eisner has a book about partnerships where he highlights a bunch of different partnerships. I think it's probably about 6 or 7 different partnerships, and he goes into pretty in-depth analysis of them. And he's a huge proponent of it, and I am a huge proponent of it as well.
I love it. And so we're going to go reverse order. So usually we go, how did you get into the freelance economy? With you, I actually am, and Rishon, I have a massive ADD and I'm very not patient. So this is coming mostly from a place of selfishly wanting to know this. But so I think, can we start with you giving us sort of a day in the life of 10X and Game Changer? And what I mean by that is, is there a typical client relationship? When we say 10X, what are we talking about? Are we talking about 100 Java developers, or are we talking about 100, CFOs or CTOs? And then we're going to back into it. So if we could, start with what is 10X? What does a day in the life look like? Who are the clients? Who's the network? And then we'll back into, okay, how did you then get here from a fake ID business to a 10X talent agency?
Sure. So 10X is and has always been a boutique talent agency. We really have modeled ourselves from the get-go on agencies in entertainment and sports like CAA or William Morris Endeavor. But the goal has always been from the get-go to not be the biggest. This is why we didn't really feel like platforming was right for what we wanted to do. It was trying to be the best, trying to use curation. I think that our secret sauce, both in our background in entertainment and what we brought over to tech, was sort of the curation of people and finding the right kinds of people to represent, and then also the right kinds of people to put on a project. So we represent around, give or take, 300 and change individuals and small entities, either dev shops or small businesses that have a multitude of different types of skill sets that they can cover. Primarily, they're North American based, but we have people in Israel, South America, some in Europe, a couple of PhDs in India. We wanted to be near shore or onshore. We wanted to really play up the idea that 10x is a concept, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that every single person we represent is truly 10x, or that every engagement that anybody has, whether it's with our company or any other company, will be a 10x kind of experience. But the idea here was to try and work with people who can provide exponential value to the customers that we're working with. So a customer in our nomenclature would be a company that's looking for talent, and the talent are the tech freelancers that we represent. And so for us, a day in the life is kind of balancing those two different worlds, the customer world and our client world. On the client side, we're sort of constantly trying to figure out what the goals are for our individual clients. What types of projects are they best suited for? So we have a bunch of meetings during the week internally to talk about the projects that are in progress currently, what's working, what's not working, why it's not working, where are the problem spots, where do we anticipate the problem spots. So much of what we do, I think, is anticipation based, on both sides of it, with the customer and with the client. And from the customer standpoint, we're trying to be in communication with them as frequently as we can to understand if the needs are being met, what problems might be on the horizon, how can we resolve those problems before they become problems, what other issues are they facing that maybe 10x can provide ancillary services for. So it's really we try to be high touch. We're not trying to be high volume. Our average price point tends to be on the higher side, and therefore typically higher than most platforms. And like I said, I think our secret sauce is about the human curation and understanding the talent better. And we do that by keeping our roster smaller and working with people over a longer period rather than a shorter period. And so that's kind of the day in the life of 10x is really split between those two different constituencies. I would like to say that the marketplace broadly is so much more mature than when we started, that companies understand how to interact with freelancers. But unfortunately, that's not really the case. And that I'm talking about even from the first conversation we have about a need all the way through to actually, the project is ongoing and payments and things like that. There's still a ton of education that we're doing on a daily basis with customers, and that we're also putting into the marketplace, because as mature and as many options as there are to find talent, companies still don't really, there is no uniform playbook of how to appropriately and ethically deal with that talent. So that's a lot of it is spent educating. And really that was the basis of Game Changer, How to Be 10x in the Talent Economy book, was to try and put a lot of those best practices out there. And we split the book up into best practices for customers and best practices for individuals. So it's really, we're a two-sided marketplace. We're a two-sided agency. Marketplace, I'm just using sort of euphemistically there. But that's really what we're doing. We're trying to educate the consumers and the sellers.
I love it. I love this. So I think the high level theme is it's a robust, and I really want to dig into the word robust talent network. And I think the two things that you mentioned was client partnership. And so the ability to, instead of saying, hey, thanks for the rec, we'll get that filled in under 5 days. Instead, it's, okay, what does your talent pipeline look like over the next 6 to 9 months? And how can we prepare you to be ready for this? And then you mentioned high touch, low volume, high cost. And so,
Higher cost. I don't know that we're high cost. There are plenty of places you can get more expensive contractors, but we are higher priced and I think by and large higher quality overall and higher success rate of project completion. On the customer side, I think that's interesting that you point that out because the conversation about more ongoing talent needs beyond the specific rec is a delicate dance, right? Because you don't want to start introducing that concept when you're trying to close a specific project. And by the way, that project could be, 5 people, it could be a team of 10 people, it could be an individual, it could be 2 weeks long, it could be a year long. Whatever the kind of project is, our goal first and foremost is to meet the customer's needs immediately. And we typically can get people onboarded in sub 2 days if a customer is motivated. But then it's about trying to understand, A, is the resource effective for them? Like, do they feel like they're getting the value? And then how else can we provide value? I think a lot of times these relationships become transactional by default because the customer is pulled in so many different directions. This may be one project that they're working on. They may be a CTO, they may be a project lead, they may be a CEO, right? So there are different types of people we're dealing with who have a different threshold for how much they want to actually interact with us. But our goal after that initial project kicks off, and this is in our conversation with a customer from the get-go, we're the agent for our talent up until the project starts. And then we're an advocate for the project because we want that project to succeed for the customer as much as for our client. And that part of that process of being an advocate for the project is where we try to then launch into the conversations of like, okay, this is going well, this is going smoothly. Like, what else can we do for you? We have a broad array of talent that we work with. Are there any other needs you have? Can we sign you up for what we call our TAP program, which is a talent availability program, where we basically highlight for people who subscribe to this a few of our tech talent that are coming available so that they can, if it's a VC, for example, they can send that to their portfolio companies to say, hey, if you need, an AI expert, 10X has somebody that's coming available in a couple of weeks. Think about it and let's be in touch and let's get you connected with 10X. So that's how we try and build these deeper relationships, but it is tough to do.
Yeah, let's get into this delicate balance. And actually, I want to dig into TAP too. So talent availability program. Can we go straight into that? Tell me about TAP, and I'd love to hear too how TAP was created, because I can't imagine it was an apple hit and you went, oh my god. I have a feeling it was iteration on iteration and clients.
You know what? You're absolutely right. Like I wish I could say like we're just geniuses. So one of the things that we identified very early on, and I should also say we work with a strategy consultant as a company. So myself and my partner Michael, we have a weekly call with our strategy consultant out of a company based in San Francisco called Enjoy the Work. They consult probably about 100 different startups. And while we're not a startup, they also work with businesses as they're maturing. So we really talk about different types of strategies and problems, what will work, what won't work, what kind of experiments we should try. We early on identified that VCs were going to be a great place for us to develop relationships and be able to service portfolio companies, right? So we really worked very hard at developing a wide array of VC relationships. But again, that delicate balance, like we don't want to be a pest to them because the relationship between a VC and a portfolio company can be very robust, but can also be arm's length, right? So we don't want to try and insert ourselves and take up the time of a VC who maybe doesn't really have a relationship with their portfolio companies where they're helping them find talent. So we wanted to find a way to keep front of mind, but make it low touch. And that's where TAP was born, right? So we know within probably a month of the end of an engagement when an engagement is beginning to wind down. And so we said, why don't we proactively ask these VCs if they would like to sign up to be alerted for when, certain freelancers, certain tech talent that we represent are coming available, and they can send it to their portfolio companies. They cannot send it to their portfolio companies. There's going to be no sales pitch. We're not going to follow up with them and nag them about it. It's just a once a month email that lists a few of our 10Xers with their profiles they can click into and their skill sets. And they do with it as they wish. And it's a way of keeping front of mind with them. So low impact, high reward, and what we thought was proactively solving a problem in a low impact kind of way.
That is fascinating. And these individuals is part of the pitch that they are already onboarded, meaning they're already the vetted individuals that portcos don't have to worry about,
Yes. I mean, that is our roster. We don't represent anybody who has not been pre-vetted by us. And that's sort of a 3 or 4 step process, which we can certainly talk about. But basically, you're right. Like, again, we're not a marketplace, so people can't just sign up. They can sign up to be represented by us, and we have a wait list of about 6,000 or 7,000 people that have signed up over the past decade. But our roster of 300 plus people, they've all been vetted, or the teams have been vetted, and we're only pitching out people who we have a contractual relationship with and have vetted already.
Gotcha. I love that. And I think that's, it's what I love about the leaders we work with is that you guys aren't full of shit. What I mean by that is like you telling me, yep, 300 roster, 6,000 on wait list, where a marketing team would go, we have 16 million freelancers. And then since we actually know, we turn to them and we go, what's the activation rate? And they go, what are you talking about? And we go,
right.
Yeah, of those 16 million, maybe 2,000 if you're lucky. So
right.
let's dig into this client education piece, because what I think where would be cool to start is, 10X has been around for what? I know it's 10 plus years, right? Is it 15 or 20?
Yeah, I mean, this is our 11th year. So we formed as an entity in 2012, but we started representing our first tech freelancer in 2011. So I use 2012 because that's sort of the formation of the company, but really we were already tinkering with things in 2011.
Okay. And let's just start with how has the industry changed? What's been different since 2012?
I remember the first conversation my partner Michael had. So the client that we picked up in 2011 and we started with, who was a musician who went to Harvard and was coding as a way to support his musical career, as opposed to like the old, like I'm a waiter or, some sort of very low impact job. So he was doing that. So he really understood the value proposition and the concept from entertainment to tech. The first company that our client passed to us to agent for him, when he said to them, oh, let me put you in touch with my agent to discuss this, the person was like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean agent? Like, who am I talking to? What is this relationship? No, this makes no sense to me. So from that standpoint, the marketplace has matured significantly. Like, companies understand that there are places they can go to find freelancers, whether it's a massive place like freelancer.com or Upwork, or a more boutique-y dev shop, or an agency like ours. Like, there's a lot of competition out there with different types of branding and different niches. So from that standpoint, I think there's been a lot of maturity, and the talent themselves. Like, I'll be honest, like when Michael and I started talking about this concept probably in 2010, I was like, I like the concept, but how are we going to find the talent? Like, that's going to be impossible to find people, right? I was like, how are we from music going to find tech talent? Of course, that turned out to be the easiest thing. Finding the talent was not hard, and growing that happened very organically for us. We had a bunch of amazing press, which really, put things on steroids. But I would say what has not matured is the way companies and customers find specific outlets like ours or our competitors. It feels very much like the Wild West. Like, we have great messaging that we've worked on over the years. We have great strategies we've worked on over the years. They're inconsistent. Sometimes they work wonderfully. Sometimes they don't work. And this year, this strategy works better than last year. And last year was great because of this, that, and the other thing. Like, there's so many different factors and so many different players on the customer side, right? There is no one set avatar of who is buying talent. Yes, they're enterprise people who are buying large quantities of talent. But you have a startup, it could be the CEO who's the one procuring talent. It could be the CTO. It could be a VP of engineering. It could be a human resources person. Actually, human resources people seem to be the least likely, but sometimes they get involved. So it's like from that standpoint, it still feels like the Wild West, and every day is a learn. And we probably fail significantly more times than we succeed. So what we thought would be the difficulty in finding the talent, but the companies would be so plentiful because every company now is a tech company, and there is this imbalance of talent to needs. Even in today's marketplace where there's pullbacks in hiring and there's layoffs, there's still an imbalance overall. It turns out finding the talent was the easy part. Finding the right types of companies is the hard part.
I couldn't agree more. And let's dig into why it's hard, because I think that's been, I actually think, Rishon, I might be one of the only entrepreneurs that's failed in finding the talent. And what I mean by that is in 2012, I tried building a marketplace for students, and I actually couldn't find the talent. That's what we sucked at. We had a couple of companies that were signed on board, but we couldn't sustainably scale the talent side.
Was it tech students, like students that were in tech, or totally unrelated?
Totally unrelated. And I think our go-to-market sucked. It was just, it was a learning. But
well, look, not every talent place has the same kind of value propositions, right? I think that the tech was a perfect cross-section of different things for there to be companies like ours, for there to be platforms, to be the two-sided marketplace. It is a great ecosystem for that, but not every ecosystem is right for it.
Oh, for sure. And now, I think it was 3 years later, Parker Dewey was what sort of exactly what we were building, but then Parker Dewey is taking the lead now. I think there's one other one too, but Parker Dewey is mostly like the standard. How would you? So two things really, really on the top of my mind. There's a massive tech shortage, right? What is the number of like tech jobs needed that can't be? Is it like 10 to 20 million, something like that?
Well, look, I think that this year has been so odd, and it's the first sort of down market for tech. And by that, I mean, there've been a fairly large amount of layoffs at some of the larger like FANG type companies. All those people have been reabsorbed. So however large the disparity is, you can still have hundreds of thousands of people laid off and be almost instantly reabsorbed into the marketplace. But I remember, during the Obama timeframe, and obviously this is going back quite a ways, but like there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs, job postings for tech talent or tech adjacent talent. And that was just, in the US alone. Now, I think that there has been an increase in, coder academies, in computer science programs at universities globally. So I do think that the supply has been inching up. But of course, the type of skill sets that are needed are changing constantly. So, how many AI experts are there truly, right? It's not that old a pursuit that there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them, but there are probably hundreds of thousands of them needed. So where there maybe aren't as many app developers needed right now as there were 8 years ago, you've now got this massive need on the AI side, or blockchain, 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe you don't need as many blockchain people today. So I think it's a constant ebb and flow of different types of skill sets needed, but there's not enough of any of it.
Yeah, I like the angle of hyper relevance is something that has always been a hook for the past, because I was early at Gigster in 2016, and hyper relevance was always a hook that you could rely on in terms of, okay, you don't just need any developer, you need a Bluetooth developer with experience in motorcycles, and that person is going to be impossible to find, thinking that they'll be 15 minutes outside headquarters. But so tell me, what is in the way? Because one of the things that I really think your brain you have such a unique visibility in, is that you've seen the various waves. And so you can kind of pick the signal from the noise in terms of where the industry is, where it's going, and what's been tried prior and actually people shouldn't care about. And so what would you say are the 1 to 3 top problems in our industry with a lens on what's in the way for clients?
Well, for starters, I do think there's a lot of noise now, right? Because the talent side has matured so much over the last decade. Um, People are being bombarded with things. So it's like, who do we trust and why should we trust them? And how do we know that this is going to be good? So I still think that there is a fair amount of word of mouth that happens in finding these things. So I do think noise is part of it. I also think that the reality is it's very hard to find somebody and message to them at the moment that they need your services, because it's not what we provide is not a constant. Like BMW, knows that people have to drive. People who do drive have to drive. And they're not just driving maybe once or twice a year, because that's a rental car company. That's a whole different proposition. So they can market more broadly. For our purposes, I mean, it's the old adage of advertising. I know 50% of my ad budget is lost. And if I could only figure that out, I'd be hugely successful. Like, we don't know exactly where to find the people at the moment that they need it. So we kind of all have to be almost everywhere all the time, which I also think is challenging. So I think that we on the supply side are spread thin a little bit because we don't really know where to message these people, or how to get our message across and our differentiation across. And there's a lot of noise. I try to unsubscribe from every email I get that has an unsubscribe that I haven't actually subscribed to. And yet I still get dozens and dozens of emails, cold sales emails every day, for any number of different kinds of services. So there's, you become habituated to it. So when there's something that's high quality that comes around, it's harder to cut through the clutter. So for us, what has worked most effectively for us is servicing the customers we do have and trying to upsell to them and to use them wherever possible to find new customers. Our favorite thing is when we work with a customer and it's a successful engagement and our contact there goes to another company and then reaches back out at this new company to bring more people on, right? That's a great experience for us because it's a natural expansion of our base without us having to try and figure out where did that person is no longer in the position, where did they go? Do we have to track them down? Do we have to find them, outreach to them? And I think that's true of any company. The customers you have are more valuable and less expensive to service than the customers you're trying to find. So I think mainly it's noise and not knowing when and where to contact the people when they have the needs that they have.
That is so this point of, what can we call it? Like frequency imbalance, in terms of we don't necessarily know when to strike, where to strike, and what to say. It's something I've noticed in this whole industry. And it's so tough because, it might be the Xbox team in Microsoft that needs 50 developers today, but doesn't need them again for 3 years, right? Or it might be the future of work team in Microsoft that needs 15 writers for case studies, and then next month they need 5. And if you can win them at first, then it turns into the best customer ever. So that's a challenge that everyone is feeling. Now, partnerships is actually the best way we've seen in the past 2 years. We've seen marketplaces partnering together to sort of have the scope of scale, I'd say, covered without needing to do everything themselves. And so what would you say, like, what are some of the top things that you see 10x really investing in over the next 2 years that you think will really move the needle?
It's a great question. And I don't have a great answer for it right now, partially because I feel like we're in shifting sands. Like, last year was this crazy, crazy year for us. And I would imagine most other supplier type companies, because so much money had been pumped into the economy, specifically in tech. I'm talking about VCs, private equity, you name it, in 2020 and 2021, and even the early part of 2022. And with the interest rates rising, and I think with a little bit of a bubble that was created with all that influx of money, This year has been much more of a recalibration year. So I don't know, I shouldn't say we as a company don't know what next year looks like yet, or even let alone 2025, because we don't know if what we're seeing now is a new normal or if this is a momentary hiccup, sort of I don't want to say holding our breath to see what happens with the economy, but basically trying to figure out what the landscape is going to be for VCs, for startups, for mid-cap companies, for enterprise level companies. Big companies have hiring freezes. They're laying people off. A lot of those people, like I said, they're being reabsorbed in other places. So right now we're trying to double down on a lot of the things that we've done in the past that have worked, while still tweaking and experimenting, running quick, low impact experiments, to see what may kick up something interesting. So I would say I can't give you anything long range, but the short range for us, it's just about experimentation, trying different micro things. For example, with Tap, we're doing some more Tap customization. So we know certain customers are in the fintech industry, for example. We will send them, we'll ask if they want us to send them fintech specific Tap emails when those types of people come up, as opposed to just getting a general tap. Like you'll get a fintech tap or you'll get an AI tap. So, we're trying iterations on different things and different experiments and seeing what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So looking back at the book, looking at 10X, what would you say are the top things that you're most proud of? And it's actually a question I've yet to ask anyone on the podcast. And so you're the first one that I've really thought about this. What what would you say are the top things that you're like, hey, we did it right, we nailed it, and I'm so proud that we did that?
I mean, one of the things that I loved it since the first day we started 10X, and I still love it today, is whenever we get a customer email saying what a great experience they're having, it just feels amazing, right? Like what we fundamentally are trying to do is improve the life of freelancers while making the life of companies easier, right? Making it easier to engage with tech talent and making that tech talent better and happier because of the types of engagements they get. So I don't know that we've by any means perfected that process or perfected the number of engagements where we get emails like that. But that is something that I never get tired of. When a customer and a client are happy, that's a great feeling, and that is a win. And that is really what, from a culture standpoint, that's really what our 10X employees love about 10X is they feel like they're actually making a difference. So that feels great to feel like you're actually making a difference. And then, you can probably relate to this, like a personal satisfaction standpoint, just writing a book and having a publishing company say, hey, we want to put this out. This is interesting and useful in the world. I'm super proud of that. And it was a great 2.5 year experience, from beginning to end. I don't know that I have another book in me or the desire for another book, but super proud that happened. I love seeing reviews, positive reviews. There's some negative reviews, but positive reviews about the book from people that I've never met before. I get an email from somebody I've never met before. By the way, that's how I met John Younger. He had written an article and included us in it, and I reached out to him cold, and I was like, "Thank you so much. Like, it's so great to meet somebody else who thinks about these things." So that is really, really rewarding. And just feeling like we're making a difference in people's lives is at the heart of why it's the why of what we do. And that I never get tired of that.
Yeah, that is one thing I always tell people when they ask me about 10X is you don't, if you search it, you don't see founder profiles talking about growth and raising money and the cover of Times, right? It's all about the experience from my experience. And I think that is such a differentiator, especially in the past 3 years when money was so cheap and we saw so many new companies that looked sexy, but it was always about the founder, right? Or it was always about, look at how fast we're growing. And the reality is, in our space, we've never really grown that fast, right? We've always been a linear type growth because the experience is so important. And that's why I was just so excited to have you on. And I wonder, as we close out, the two things that are burning on the top of my mind is, what are some of those things that you think really make the client experience work? And then the last thing we'll get into is just where do you see the industry going? But let's, if we could, we're closing in, but what do you think are some of the things that really make the client experience work? And it could be tactical things like hosting a QBR every quarter. It could be something like making sure the client has 10x t-shirts. It could be making sure there's an account management layer. But what do you think really makes the client experience tick?
Let me just make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you asking what, when we're dealing with the talent that we represent, what makes the experience of working with 10x good for them? Or are you saying like what works well for those clients working on engagements? What's the angle of the question?
I actually I want two things. And the second one, yes, what I want is what makes the good client experience, meaning the end customer, not the freelancer. And then I also want from that, and it might be the same answer, is for the clients. So for the enterprise leader, what do they need to be doing to make it a successful experience as
Got it.
well? So what are
Okay,
you
great.
doing on the enterprise leader side, and what is the enterprise leader doing on their side to make a good experience?
Awesome. So one of the things that very early on we identified, because we had been hiring freelancers before we started 10x, was really ironing out the expectations ahead of time, as best as you can. Now, there's so many different types of engagements, so I can't say that every engagement we go into with a really crystal clear idea of like, this is what we're going to build, this is the timeline of it, these are the deliverables, these are deliverable dates. But we want to try and get as much of that information as we possibly can and get both sides aligned in their expectations of it. And that includes things like, what's the cadence for communication? What's the frequency of communication? What's the expectation of communication? Do you want there to be a lot of communication, or do you want them to go off and just do this thing and then come back to you and show you the work product? So I think at the outset, the best projects for us are the ones where there is the best pre-communication about the alignment and the expectations. Engagements that go off the rails are almost always because, not to say the companies don't know what they're doing, but like they don't really have a clear understanding of what they want to build. They don't have a clear hierarchy of how they want to communicate. They have too many chefs in the kitchen. The first line of our contract is, when this project kicks off, choose a point person to deal with this. Don't have a team of people all communicating on top of each other. So expectation setting very clearly from the outset, I think, is the number one most important thing for a project's success. There's always going to be the potential for personality conflicts. So those are things that in any human relationship, they're going to happen. What we try to really do when we're matching a 10Xer to a project, yes, we want to find somebody who we think can work and mesh culturally. That's certainly great. But we want, first and foremost, to make sure that the skill set is exactly the skill set that's needed for that project. And we can only get to that by really aligning on what it is we're building, what's the language, what are the platforms that need to be utilized here, what are the skill sets. So that's, I think, the number one most important thing for a project's success, is getting all those things ironed out ahead of time, getting buy-in, including those, as much of that stuff is getting captured in the contract as possible. And then, honestly, the biggest problem that we have, the two biggest problems, I should say, that we have when projects not necessarily go off the rails, but become problematic in some way, shape, or form. First and foremost, it's adhering to payment terms. I don't know how this happened, but at some point, many, 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 many years ago, decades ago, companies decided like, 90-day payment terms, that's totally fine. I mean, we're going to pay our employees weekly, and we're going to get paid weekly as for running the company. But yeah, you're providing a service to us. Like, we're going to kick that down the road 90 days. So we have very, very strict payment terms. Our standard payment terms are 5 business days after the receipt of an invoice. We do all weekly invoicing. You know, there's some exceptions to that. There's some negotiation on that structure. But what we're constantly hammering home to companies is these people are not employees. They're not getting paid by us. They're not an employee of 10X Management, and they're not an employee of your company. So if they're working 40 hours for you this week and you're not paying them, they don't have any money. They're not getting paid. So most of our time is spent chasing invoices, unfortunately, and getting people to honor the agreements that they've made. You know, if somebody signs a contract and says, we're going to have payment to you within 5 business days of receipt of the invoice, and it's the 10th business day and we don't have the invoice paid, like, that's a problem. One time it happens, okay, I get it, you know, miscommunication or something like that. If it happens every single time, like, that becomes a problem. And that is where most of the problems actually occur. I think by and large, the projects themselves, because the quality of the talent is high, the projects themselves technically are good, great. Where things go sideways, it's like those little things that you just should do that just don't happen.
No, so the expectation setting is so simple, yet never or very seldom followed. And a lot of times, I don't know if you see this, but a lot of times I end up just saying, what do you do for full time? Literally, if you replicated that, you'd be in a better place than you are now. And so that is such an important thing. And the payment terms just kind of cracked me up, to be honest. It's one of the reasons that I actually love working with enterprises, is because their process is so bureaucratic and so boring. But because it's that way, you're usually going to get paid out within 30 days, no matter what.
We know we're going to get paid by enterprise customers. Like, it's never so much from our standpoint, like, we're not going to get paid. But let me tell you how many times we have submitted invoices through a portal and they get rejected because, oh, you know, the project hit its budget limit and the person running the project had to reopen a new budget. So there's a new PO number. So now they have to start the process all over again and another 30 days. You know what I mean? Like, come on, guys, just pay the bill. Like, why do you have to make it so complicated?
Yeah,
Figure it out on your end. Don't punish us because you guys have internal stuff you're dealing with.
I think an email I saw this morning was, I think one client is 9 months behind. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, come on now.
Yeah. And that's why I always laugh when, so I've always had a love-hate with marketplaces, to be honest, where I always balance between they're great and why do we need them? And it always comes back to, no, we definitely need them, because when you've really seriously freelanced, you learn you don't want to deal with the crap that as an individual, you probably won't be able to fight. You know, I mean, look, as much
100% our value proposition to our 10Xers is we handle the business stuff. Now, if a customer doesn't want to pay, like, there's only so much any human, a collection agency, whatever, can do to actually pull that money out. So I'm not going to say that we have some sort of secret sauce that means 100% of the time it's 100% of the money every time. But we have an incredible success rate, and we have a protocol of how we deal with those things. Ratcheted up, you know, up the food chain, but they don't want to deal with that. And nor should they have to. Like, they're there to solve a problem, a technical problem. This is not a technical problem. This is a problem of, like, pardon my French, but, like, just get your shit together, company. Like, here's the bill, pay the bill. Boom. We process thousands of payments a month, thousands on our end. And we pay out within 48 hours. Like, there is no delay. Like, we get the money in, we get the money out. Like, what's the problem? There should be no holdup there. So when there are issues like that, those are red flags for us, big time. And by the way, we have a great clause that we created in our contract, which I don't understand how this isn't a thing in every single contract. IP does not transfer for a project until all invoices for that project have been paid.
That is the gold. Yep. That is, and that's where our industry cracks me up. As much as we talk about innovation, something like that is 10x more impactful than any AI generative AI, blockchain solution.
Like,
Yeah.
no, duh. You want to own the stuff and not pay for the stuff? Nope.
I love it. So, Rashawn, so we got a rocket round, and you're gonna be a couple questions firing at you. Some are gonna
Is
be
this sponsored
fun.
by Rocket Mortgage? Do you have a
No,
rand sponsorship
I
here?
didn't. I didn't even think about that. We haven't, to be honest. So your episode's going to be coming out in V2 of the pod, and V1 was just incredible content. We got to number one globally, and V2 is actually how do we do that whole sponsorship? So just it's funny you mentioned that.
Rocket Mortgage.
Rocket.
Rocket Round brought to you by Rocket Mortgage. You heard it here first, folks.
When you get that right, we will definitely send you a referral fee, Rashawn. Okay. Question number one is going to be, it's Friday night in the city. What are you doing?
I'm probably doing the same thing I'm doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, which is either going out to a sushi dinner
Ooh.
or staying in for a family dinner, or potentially seeing theater or a show, concert. But more often than not, I'm home reading.
You and John are so similar.
I'm kind of a boring guy.
You and John are the definition of New York City people. It just cracks me up, So it's either a show, it's sushi. What other like cultural enrichment activity? That's the theme of it. Some cultural enrichment activity.
I mean, look, we live in New York City. We've got it at our fingertips 24/7, 365. You got to take advantage of it as much as you can.
That is so funny. Okay, now we're going to get into favorite coffee shop or bagel place.
So I actually had a bagel sandwich for lunch today. Our office is in Midtown, Lower Midtown, and there is an Essa bagel. Essa is ESSA, is a small, I don't know if it's a chain, but there are a few of them, quite good. But I feel like bagels and pizza, there are so many good places, not a ton of great places. And you can also get cheapo crap stuff. So, there are probably 2 or 3 dozen really good bagel type places in the city, just as there are 2 or 3 dozen really good pizza places. But there are probably 1,000 bagel places and pizza places overall. So, you can get some good stuff. But Barney Greengrass is my favorite place to go to sit down and have like a proper sort of what they call appetizing. It's an appetizing meal. That's what they call like bagels and lox and things like that, is appetizing.
I love it. Okay. All right. I'll make sure John brings me there next.
And I don't drink coffee. I shouldn't say I drink coffee occasionally, but I'm not a stimulant junkie.
That I'm jealous. Hey, good for you. Here's my stimulant. But
Yep.
Okay, 2 more fun questions left. First one is favorite book and why.
I've found that I fall in love with books. Like after I've read a book, I fall in love with it. So my favorite book is changing constantly. Fiction over the last year and a half or so, I would say maybe a book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which actually has a slight techie kind of bent to it, but I think it's a fantastic story. And another book, which is historical fiction called Horse, which is about a real thoroughbred horse, but the story around that is all sort of fictionalized, based off of an actual historical painting of a horse and a jockey and sort of the backstory of that. Super interesting. Takes place pre-antebellum South and North, and also told today and in that period of time. Very good. From a nonfiction standpoint, I just read Lincoln's biography, which is amazing.
Who wrote it?
I think John Meacham wrote it, I believe. I didn't realize the Gettysburg Address was like a 3-minute speech.
Whoa.
So it was delivered after a speaker who spoke for about 2 hours. And then Lincoln got up there and gave the Gettysburg Address, which was had mixed reception when he spoke it, because it was super short and it was super polarizing. But I thought that was a very interesting fact.
That is so cool. Okay, I'm going to pick it up right now.
And I'm reading right now American Prometheus, which is the Oppenheimer story that was the basis for the movie.
Oh my God. That is so cool. Okay. Fun fact. Since we published, I cannot get myself to finish a book. Not going to lie. For the first year, I didn't even read one. I just
Do you read
burnt out.
books, or do you read Kindle?
Nonfiction.
No, but I'm saying
books.
Like physical.
Oh yeah, only physical. I have insane
Interesting.
dyslexia, so like I just can't. I can't. It's all or nothing. You know, it's either I'm loving taking notes, or I just can't even focus.
I find reading on a Kindle is far easier than reading a physical book.
I've heard that a couple times. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I mean,
last question.
You can't take notes. So that if you're taking notes on things, that makes it challenging.
Exactly. Okay. Favorite animal and why?
If you'd asked me this 3 years ago, I would say I'm not really an animal person. Like, I don't like cats right off the bat. Like, cats, I think, have mental issues and might kill you in your sleep. So definitely not a cat person, but we got a dog. My wife and I got a dog a little bit more than 2 years ago, or maybe just 2 years ago, because I think we got the dog in August. And it's a miniature long hair dachshund who is adorable. And so I would say that's my favorite animal and breed of animal. And one thing I love about her is the dog's name is Penny Lane. One thing I love about Penny is that she's small enough that like we can just pick her up and travel with her. We can get on a plane with her. Like she can just go wherever we need to go, which is nice.
Yeah, that is. Luca has flown about 30 times, but he is a golden and definitely not the easiest, but definitely worth it.
Yeah.
But all right, Rishon, this was incredible. Where can our listeners find you?
So our website is 10xmanagement.com, the number 10, the letter X management.com, or gamechangerthebook.com. I'm on all the socials. I'm on the LinkedIn. I'm on the Facebooks and the Instagrams. And that's how you can find me.
I love it. Rishon, thanks for hopping on, bud.
Thank you. Great to see you.